Hi guys, welcome back. This is More Bespoke and I'm Atenas, and for today's tutorial I'm going to teach you how to make this snowflake tea towel. So this is a really long tutorial because we are doing a line by line crochet along. So this will be done in two parts, so part 2 will be available next week. So let's get started. So for our supplies, we're going to need 2 skeins in blue. So this is, what is this? Bright navy. And I'm just using sugar and cream. And this is a cotton yarn, so it's 100% cotton. And if you're going to be using this as a tea towel, so you're going to be using it in your kitchen, please use 100% cotton because this won't melt when exposed to high heat. So if you're going to pull something out of the oven or you're going to use it as a pot holder, cotton is the way to go. So this skein, if you can't find this one specifically, here we go. So one of these has 200 yards or 184 meters. And this is just a 4-ply cotton yarn. So you're going to need 2 skeins of this or any other blue you want. And then I'm using 1 skein of peaches and cream. And then this is in ecru. And one of these skeins is 120 yards or 109 meters. So, and this is also a 4-ply 100% cotton yarn. Your hook is going to be a G hook, and this is 4.25 millimeters. And you're also going to need a chart. So this chart is available on the website. I'll link it down below. You can get the chart by itself, or you can get the written pattern, which is a step-by-step instructions from the very first row to the very last one. And this is an instant download PDF, so go check that out. The link is down in the description box below. You will also need a pair of scissors and a yarn or a tapestry needle. So let's take a look at our chart. We have a couple of sections that repeat. So we have these 2 snowflakes, which are the same, and then we have these rows that repeat. So for these rows, I'm only going to go through how to do this section. These are just repetitions of it, so once we complete this part, you should be able to complete this one and this one without any problem. This part right here is the main focus point, so we're going to work on this whole section from here to here. We're going to go row by row so that you can create this entire design. This one I made it a little bit easier than the reindeer towel, simply because we have a lot of different activity going on. So I'm using a half double crochet in all of this towel. So now how to read this chart. So this chart is read, so this is for, I'm going to go over right-handed first, and then if you're left-handed, we'll cover this in just a moment. If you're right-handed, if you take a look here at the very bottom, you start with stitch 1, row 1. So you're going to start here at the bottom and you're going to go from right to left. So every odd numbered row, so 1, 3, 5, etc., you're going to read right to left. Even number rows, because you're going to work your way this way, so you'll be on this side. All of your even numbered rows are read from left to right. These right here are your row numbers, so they match. They start from 1 and go all the way to 78. The numbers down here are your stitch numbers. You also have a second row of stitch numbers up at the top, and these go from left to right. So this is a guide to help you when you're working from left to right on your even numbered rows. You can use this as your stitch guide. Now, if you're left-handed, you're gonna do the opposite. So you're gonna start your row, your very first stitch. You're gonna work 53. So it's row number 1, stitch number 53, and you're going to work all of your odd numbered rows are worked from left to right. So you're gonna read your chart this way. Once you get to the end, all your even numbered rows are read from right to left. So you're going to be reading it this way, and if you're right-handed, you're going to start going this way. So the same applies. You just use the stitch guide to help you out throughout this work. If you print out the pattern, it makes it a lot easier as well, because you can fold the page as you go, or you can use another sheet of paper and tape it on there, or do whatever you need to keep track of your stitches and your rows. So enough about that. Let's get started with our pattern. So we need to begin with a chain of 53 stitches, and that you can see here on your chart. So we're going to grab our yarn. We have to start with a slip knot. So wrap your yarn around 2 fingers, insert your hook right behind this loop. So grab this thread here in the back and pull that through. And now you can remove your fingers and tighten your knot. So and you tighten it by pulling on the individual threads too. So now that you've got your slip knot, we have to start our chain. If you've never chained before, we're going to start with a yarn over. So wrap the yarn around your hook, and you're going to pull this top loop through this bottom loop for 1. So yarn over and pull the top loop through the bottom loop. It's 2. Yarn over, 3. Yarn over, 4. So there's your chain. Continue working until you have 53 stitches. So we have 4, so just keep going. You need, I think, another 49 stitches. So continue making your chain. I'll see you here in a moment. So once you have completed your chain of 53 stitches, we're going to chain 1 more. So just pinch this last stitch, chain 1 more, and we're going to start our very first half double crochet in this stitch that you're pinching. So skip the first one and go to the second stitch. So to make a half double crochet, you're going to yarn over and you're going to insert your hook into that second stitch. And then you yarn over and you pull your hook out. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. So all you have to do now is just yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And that's a half double crochet. So let's do it again. We're going to go into this next stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, and then yarn over and pull your hook out. You're going to have 3 loops on your hook. So you're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull your hook out, and then you yarn over and pull through all 3. So just continue making a half double crochet into every single stitch of the row. So once you get to this very last stitch, we'll meet up again. So we've reached the last row, or the last stitch of the row, sorry. So here it is. We're going to have to do a color switch on this last stitch, because if you take a look at our chart, the very first stitch of the next row is in white, or ecru, or whatever color you're using. So it's going to be in our second color. The entire row is worked in ecru. So we need to switch color here. And this is how you're going to handle every color switch for the rest of this chart. I will show you again, so if you don't get it this time, don't worry. We'll practice it at least 1 or 2 more times. So you're going to start your half double crochet the same way you start every other one. So you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And now, once you have your 3 loops ready to go, you're going to yarn over in your other color. So loop it around your hook and leave a nice tail end of yarn. Loop it around your hook, and you're going to pull this white loop through these blue loops, like so. And now you just pull on the blue yarn to tighten up the stitch. So now that we're here, you can just drop this little tail end of ecru yarn. You're going to start every row with a chain 1. So it doesn't matter what the beginning of your row looks like, it's always chain 1. So we're going to chain 1. And now we're going to work another row of half double crochets, only this time we have to carry our yarn. So when you carry yarn, if you're not familiar with it, if you are, just carry your yarn all the way through, half double crochet in every stitch, and do a color switch here on the last stitch. For everyone else who doesn't know how to carry yarn, here's how you're going to do it. So just grab your blue yarn, and you are going to place it. So if you take a look at your work, there's this top part of the stitch. You're going to lay this yarn on top of the stitches, so that when you crochet your half double crochets above here, this yarn will remain hidden behind the stitching. So what that's going to do is it's going to make your blue yarn a lot more accessible, and while you won't need to access it for this row since the entire row is in ecru, you will need to be at least very comfortable carrying yarn once we get to this point, because you're going to have like here you have one stitch and you have to switch color, and you're going to have 3 stitches, switch color, 1 stitch, switch color. So you need to be able to have your blue yarn right at that stitch so that you can switch it, stitch the half double crochet, and then switch back if you need to. So that's why you carry yarn. So let's start this next stitch while carrying the blue yarn. So you're going to do your half double crochet in ecru. So you just yarn over, and you're going to insert your hook into the very first stitch of the row. And now make sure that this blue yarn is laying over this other work. So let me grab, here we go. Alright, so once you're in the stitch, you're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull up a loop, and you yarn over and pull through all 3. So continue to carry your yarn, go to the next stitch, yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. So all you do is just half double crochets all the way across while holding this yarn on top of these stitches. So as you can see, the yarn is right here and it isn't dangling on the back or anything. So that's it. Continue working your half double crochets. You're going to need to do a color switch at the end, but I will see you there just to help you out if you still need some help. So now that we're on our last stitch of the row, so for those of you that are not very experienced with crochet, it's going to be this one. So it kind of looks like it's a bit round. So it's this stitch right here is the very last stitch of the row. Try your best to not skip this stitch, because otherwise your work will start to get narrow, and by the time you get to here, you're going to start your row right around here. So try not to skip your stitches. So we have to do one last color switch before we go on to the next row, and row number 3 is just one row of navy. So it's just going to be navy half double crochets all the way through. So let's switch our color here. So we're going to start with a yarn over, insert your hook into your stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and now I'm going to pull this ecru thread, or the white thread, towards the front. Grab my blue thread, yarn over and pull through all 3. There we go. Now you chain 1 and turn your work around. And now you have to carry the white yarn. So you're going to carry it just like you carried the blue yarn. So you're going to hold your white yarn up here on top of all of the stitches, and we're going to start our half double crochet in this very first stitch. So you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and close your stitch. So once you're done with that, you can pull on this white thread a little and it'll tighten it up a bit. So continue to crochet a half double crochet in blue all the way to the end. So there we go. Make sure you carry your yarn. On the very last stitch of the row, you're going to do another color switch, similar to what we just did, because row number 4, our first stitch, see on either side, whether you're right-handed or left-handed, it is going to be a 1 stitch in ecru. So make sure you do your very last stitch of the row is going to be a color switch. So I'll see you when I finish the row.
So let's take a look at our chart. So we're on row number 4, and our very first stitch is in white. The next 3 stitches are going to be worked in blue, and then we go back to white, and 3 blue, 1 white, and so forth until you complete the entire row. This very last stitch is also in white, so let's get started here with that. So since we did a color switch in the previous row, so that very last stitch in row number 3 needed to be a color switch. So now we're going to start the row with a chain 1. And remember that we have to carry yarn throughout this entire project. So we're going to hold our yarn here. So let's set up our blue yarn so it's ready to go for our stitch. And then we're going to start our very first half double crochet. And that first half double crochet, since we only need the 1 stitch, you have to make this one a color switch. So anytime you crochet 1 stitch in a color, it is a color switch stitch. So I'm going to pull the yarn forward and then grab my blue yarn and finish my stitch with the blue yarn. So now the next 3 stitches are in blue, so remember to carry the white yarn. So then we have 1, 2, and then this last stitch, so stitch number 3, is going to be worked as a color switch. So just drop the blue yarn, pick up the white, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. And there's our color switch. We need 1 white stitch, so we're just going to do a color switch half double crochet. So here we've done the 3, so it's 1, 3, and now we're at the 1 white stitch. So just yarn over, pull up your 3 loops, and then we're going to pull this white yarn towards the front and hold it down with your thumb, and then just yarn over in blue and pull through all 3 loops for a color switch. There we go. And now we're going to crochet 3 stitches in blue. So remember to carry the white yarn. So we have 1, 2, and then 3, and this last stitch is a color switch. So just drop the blue yarn, grab the white yarn, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 stitches. So now we do 1 white stitch, and it's a color switch. And now we're on blue, and we're going to do 3 blue stitches. So that's the pattern for the remainder of this row. So just do the 3 blue, that last stitch is a color switch, and then you're going to do 1 white stitch. Every single one of the white stitches is a color switch. So keep working the rest of the row, and I will see you on the very last stitch. So here we are on, I left the last 2 stitches just to show you guys how we're going to finish the row. So we only have 2 blue stitches, so we need to complete that 3rd blue stitch. Remember that that last stitch is a color switch, so we're going to switch to our white yarn. And the very last stitch of the row, as you can see here on the chart, is going to be worked as a white stitch. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook, pull up a loop, and now if you take a look at the chart, you're going to notice that the first stitch of the next row is in blue. So we're going to have to do this last stitch is going to have to be a color switch. So you just pull your yarn forward, yarn over in blue, and pull through all 3 loops. And now you're ready to begin the next row in blue. So we're going to start with a chain 1, and then you're going to turn your work around, and we're ready to begin row number 5. So make sure that you get your white yarn ready to go, so that way you are ready to start your next few stitches, and you're going to be carrying your yarn again. So our first 2 stitches of the row are crocheted in blue. So we have 2 in blue, 1 in white, and then 3 blue, 1 white, 3 blue, 1 white, until you get to the end where you're going to have 2 blue stitches at the end. So let's get started here. So we need to do 2 blue stitches. We're going to start here on the very first stitch of the row. So there's 1, and then that second blue stitch is going to be a color switch. So drop the blue, grab the white yarn, and then finish your stitch. And then you have 1 white stitch, so that's going to be a color switch. So just pull your yarn forward, and then grab your blue yarn, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. And then the next 3 stitches are going to be in blue. So this is where we begin the 3, then 1, 3, 1, 3, 1. There we go. So we've got 1, 2, and the 3rd stitch is our color switch. So just drop the blue yarn, grab the white, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. We have 1 white stitch, which is going to be a color switch. So we have our 3 loops, pull your white yarn forward, pull up your blue yarn, and pull through all 3 loops. There we go. So continue the rest of the row in the same way. you're going to have your 3 blue, 1 white, 3 blue until you get to the last 2 stitches of the row. We've made it to the end of the row. We've got the last 2 stitches, which we're going to crochet in blue. So there's 1, and then this very last stitch is 2. And we're going to close the stitch in blue because at the beginning of row 6, we're going to start with a blue stitch. So there you go. So we're going to do 1 stitch in blue and then we switch to white. So we do 1 blue, 3 white, 1 blue, 3 white, all the way across the row. So we're going to chain 1 in blue, turn our work around, and then set up your yarn so that you can carry it again. And we're going to do 1 blue stitch. So because we're only doing 1, that has to be a color switch. So you're going to drop your blue yarn. So there we go. Grab your white and pull through all 3 loops. And now the next 3 stitches we're going to crochet in white. So there's 1, 2, and this last one is going to be our color switch. So we're going to pull up 3 loops in white, pull our yarn forward. So if any of you are wondering why it is that I pull the white yarn to the front and then just drop the blue yarn, so every time you see me grab the yarn like this and I'll pull it forward, that is because it helps keep my yarn from tangling. So by pulling the blue yarn towards the back and the white yarn towards the front, it helps keep one yarn on either side of my work so it doesn't twist up. Because if you were to pull both yarns towards the front or just drop both yarns, it starts to twist up like this, and then by the end of the row, you're going to have to go through and untwist everything completely. So if you just pull one yarn to the front, so that's why I do the white yarn, and then just drop the blue yarn when I switch color, all I have to do at the end of the row is just untwist my yarn once. So here, once you get to the end, you just twist it over one time, and there you go. Your yarn isn't all twisted up or tangled up. So it'll save you a lot of time doing that. But that's optional. You can do that if you want to, or just do whatever you want. Alright, so we're going to move on to the next stitch. So we've done our 3 white stitches. Now we have to do 1 in blue. So we're going to do that as a color switch. So I just drop the blue yarn, and then I'm pulling up the white, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. And then we have 3 stitches in white. So it's 1, 2, and the third one is a color switch. So I'm going to pull my white yarn forward, grab the blue, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. And then we do 1 blue yarn, or 1 blue stitch, sorry. Drop the yarn to the back, grab the white yarn, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and there you go. You're going to continue this pattern throughout the rest of the row. So it'll be 3 white, 1 in blue. And once you get to the end of the row, like this, your very last stitch should be in blue. So just yarn over, pull up a loop, and we're going to close the stitch in blue because the first stitch of row number 7 is going to be worked in blue. So here we have 2 blue stitches. So since we're already working with blue yarn, we don't have to do a color switch. So the next row is going to be 3 blue, 1 white, 3 blue, 1 white. So it's just a repetition of row number 5. So let me back up here and that way we can start together. So you finish a stitch, chain 1, turn your work around, and we're going to repeat row 5 or begin row 7. And you're going to start with 2 blue stitches. That second stitch is going to be a color switch. So we're going to switch to our white yarn, and then we're going to do 1 white stitch. And that's going to be a color switch. So pull your yarn forward, switch to blue. And now we're going to follow it up with 3 blue. So this is the row where we did 2 at the beginning, and then it was 1 white, and then 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, all the way across. So I'm going to go through this one a little more quickly just to show you a few. I'll show you a few of the stitches here because it is just a repetition of row number 5, and we've already worked on that row. So just continue working the rest of your row this way. So it'll be 3, 1, 3, 1 until you get to the end of the row. The last stitch is going to be 2 blue stitches. So at the very end of the row, you're going to have 2 blue stitches, and then we'll start on row number 8. So we've reached the end of the row, and I just have 1 stitch left. But if we notice on our chart, the first stitch in row number 8 is going to be worked in white yarn. So that last stitch of row number 7 has to be worked as a color switch. So that way we are ready to go for row number 8. So we're just going to begin our half double crochet in blue. And then we're going to pull up our white yarn, yarn over, pull through all 3 blue loops, chain 1. We're going to turn our work around, and we're going to do that very first stitch of the row is going to be worked in white. Since we are only working 1 stitch, it's going to be a color switch. We're going to grab our blue yarn, close up that stitch, and then the next 3 stitches are going to be worked in blue. So row number 8 is a repetition of row number 4. So here we go. So here's the 3rd stitch. That 3rd stitch has to be a color switch. So we're going to drop our blue yarn, grab the white, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. We're going to crochet 1 stitch in white, and that's going to be a color switch. Then we are going to follow that up with 3 blue stitches. So there's 1, and then 2, and then 3. And we're just going to continue this pattern throughout the remainder of the row. So keep it up. I'll see you at the end of the row. Once you've completed your row, it's going to look like this. So we finished, the last stitch is in white. You do have to make a color switch on this very last stitch, because row number 9 is going to be a repetition of row number 1. So we've already finished all of this pretty like cross pattern here. Now we're just going to repeat row 1, 2, 3 for rows 9, 10, and 11. So you're just going to do a row of half double crochets in one color, and then for row number 10 you're going to do in white, and then row number 11 you go back to blue. So crochet those. So just pause the video for a moment, complete those rows, and I'll see you again at the beginning of row number 12. So once you've completed rows 9, 10, and 11, your work should look like this. And now we're ready to begin row number 12. And for row number 12, we're going to begin the snowflake. So we have 1 stitch in white throughout the entire work. So this blue section is going to be 25 stitches, and then we have to complete 1 white and complete the other side of the blue stitching. So we're just going to start here at the very beginning of the row. Remember to carry your yarn. So we're going to chain 1, and then you're going to crochet 25 stitches in blue. Remember that your 25th stitch is going to be a color switch, because stitch number 26 we have to work in white. So I've completed 24 of the 25 stitches, and I wanted to show you something here, because when you work in really long sections in one color, you can see the other color poking through. So to avoid having too many stitches just poking through a lot, because you kind of start loosening up the tension on your work, you need to pull on the thread that you are carrying. So in this case, I'm carrying the white yarn. So just to kind of hide those stitches a little bit more, you're going to grab the yarn that you're carrying, in this case the white yarn, and you're just going to pull on it a little. Try not to pull on it too tight, because if you pull on it too tight, you're going to scrunch up your work. So pull on it gently, make sure that you still have a loose tension throughout your work, and that should help hide those little white stitches a little bit more. Because you are carrying yarn and you're using 2 highly contrasting colors, you will still see some of it poking through, but you won't have a lot of yarn bleeding through your work. So you won't have any loops bleeding through. Alright, so once you're on that last stitch, now we can go ahead and do our color switch. And at this point, you won't be able to pull on that white thread anymore, so make sure you've already pulled that through before you do your color switch. Otherwise, you'll still have all of that yarn bleeding through. So now we do stitch number 26, which is going to be worked in white, And since there's only one stitch, you're going to work it as a color switch. And then we switch back to blue. And the rest of the row, you're going to work that in blue. Remember to pull your white thread at that very last stitch to keep your work from bleeding through. And now we're going to go to row number 13. And for row number 13, we're going to work 24 blue stitches. Stitch number 24 is your color switch, and then we have to work 3 stitches in white, and then we'll complete the rest of the row in blue. So I'm just going to get started on that. So I'll finish the rest of this row and then begin row number 13 with 24 stitches, and I'll see you at the very first of the white stitches. So I've completed 23 of the 24 stitches, and now is a good time to go pull on this on the white thread. So if you have anything bunched up, just kind of tug on it a little bit, make sure that you don't have any stitches poking out. And now let's look at our chart. So we're going to have 3 stitches in white, so we need to do a color switch here on stitch number 24. So we'll be adding a white stitch on either side of the center one, so on the right and on the left. So let's do stitch number 24 as our color switch. So we're just going to yarn over in blue, pull up 3 loops, grab our white yarn, and finish the stitch. And now the next 3 stitches we're going to work in white. So it'll be 1, 2, and then this third one is our color switch. So there we go. Let me get everything untangled here for a moment. There we go, yarn over in blue and pull through all 3 loops. And now the rest of the row you're going to finish in blue. So there we go. I'll work a couple of stitches just to show you what it looks like. There we go. So that's what our work looks like so far. Here's our 3 stitches. Complete the rest of the row, and then we can move on to row number 14. So for row number 14, if we take a look at our chart here, we're going to be adding 2 little, I'm going to call these arms for the snowflake. So we're going to add 2 new ones, and then we have a big section of blue left. So from here we have, so let's see, that's about 15, so it'll be 15 stitches. That'll go from the side of the chart all the way to that first stitch of the arm of the snowflake. So we have 15 there, and then we have 1 white stitch, and then we have 9 stitches, 1 white, and 9, and then we complete the rest of the row. So I've already begun here with my 15 stitches, and then we have to do our first little white stitch. So I've got 14, I have to do stitch number 15 to do my color switch, and then we have 1 white stitch, and we're going to follow it up with 9 stitches right after that. Okay, so let's continue to crochet. So I have already made 14. I have to do stitch number 15, which is my color switch. And then we're going to do 1 stitch in white. So color switch. Follow it up with 9 blue stitches. And then once you've done 9 stitches, you're going to do your color switch here on this first white stitch of the 3. So we're going to do only 1 white stitch, so it's going to be right in the center stitch from the previous row. So here's stitch number 9. It's going to become a color switch. There we go. That 1 center white stitch is going to be a white stitch. So we're just going to do 1. That's a color switch. And now we're going to repeat what we did just a minute ago. So we're going to do 9 stitches in blue. And then we're going to do the 1 white stitch and finish off the rest of the row in blue. So pause the video if you need to, but continue working the rest of the row, and I'll see you at the beginning of row number 15. Okay, so here's row number 14 finished. So this is what your work should look like right about now. So now let's take a look at our chart. So we're going to be beginning here on this side, and here we have 16 stitches in blue. Now if you notice this white stitch, it has moved over 1 towards the center. So It's kind of looking like it's going diagonal. And then we're going to add another white stitch. So we're going to do white, blue, white. And then we have a couple blue stitches, and then we're going to do this section. So here's that center stitch. We're going to add one white on the right side. So it's going to be white, blue, white, blue, white. And then we have another small section of blue. And then we're just going to repeat what we did on the other side. So we have white, blue, white right over here. And then we finish the rest of the row in blue. So let's get started with those 16 stitches in blue. So if you are having a bit of a hard time keeping up with all of the different numbers I'm throwing out here, remember to go check out the website. You can get a PDF copy of the chart. So that is available on the website. It is an instant download, so you'll be able to have access to it right away. Go check that out. I'll put a link down below the video, and that way you can also follow along with a chart. So it will make things a lot easier. All right, so I'm going to keep crocheting these. So once you've completed 15 stitches, we're going to work stitch number 16 here on this white stitch, and that's going to be our color switch. And then we're going to work one white stitch, and that's a color switch. We're going to follow it up with a blue stitch, and that's going to be a color switch as well. You're going to do one more white stitch, which is going to be a color switch. And then you're going to work 4 blue stitches. So once you've completed the 4 stitches, stitch number 4 here is going to be a color switch. We're going to do one white stitch, and then we're going to do one blue stitch, follow it up with a white stitch, and now we're at the center of the snowflake. And then we're going to do one blue, but remember that it has to be a color switch, which I didn't do. All right, there we go. And then you have one last white stitch in this section. And now you have to crochet 4 blue stitches. So then we're going to crochet 3 blue stitches, and then do the 4th one is our color switch. So once you crochet the 3 stitches, we're going to do stitch number 4 is our color switch, and then we can do that last little arm of the snowflake. There we go. So now we need to crochet 1 white stitch, and then we're going to do 1 blue, and then 1 white, and the rest of the row you're just going to work in blue stitches. So there we go. Now from here on out, you just work in blue and you are done with your row. Moving on to row number 16, we see that we add another stitch, and we're going to shift everything over towards the center. We have 3 consecutive stitches in the middle, and then we're going to have 2 on that other arm of the snowflake. So let's get started here. We're going to need 16 stitches in blue. So once you get those, you should be here at this first white stitch of the little arm. So here's a little arm. So we should be on that first white stitch. So we have to shift everything over 1. So we're going to crochet 1 last blue stitch, which is stitch number 16. We're going to switch to our white yarn, and then we have 2 white stitches. So there's 1, 2, and then we're going to have 5 blue stitches. Okay, so here we are on 4, Stitch number 5 is going to be right above that first white stitch. So that's going to be a color switch. And now we have 3 white stitches. Let me switch back to blue. And we have another 5 blue stitches. And then we just complete the rest of the row. So it'll be 5 blue stitches, and then we have 2 consecutive white stitches, and then the rest of the row is going to be completed in blue. So we're just going to keep crocheting in blue until we get to this first little white stitch. Okay, so 5. And there's our white stitch, so we need to do a color switch right here. And there's 1 white stitch and the second one. That second one is our color switch. And then we complete the rest of the row in blue. Alright everyone, so this concludes part 1 of this 2-part tutorial. Don't forget to tune in next week so you can watch part 2. If you're really excited to complete this project and you just want to finish it, you can go ahead and stop by the Mode Bespoke shop. I will leave a link in the description box below so you can get a copy of the chart. And if you want the written instructions, you can also follow along with the written instructions and complete your tea towel. So don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and like and share the video if you have enjoyed it. So we will see you all again next Thursday. Until then.